They would actually go to their neighboring Target or Walmart or whatever store. They would go buy the product they needed to fill the order and come back to their own store, return it so they could fill an omni-channel order.
Oh my. Figuring out the voice of the customer when they're not willing to tell you is the challenge that I always seek out personally, because I want to go find out, how do I know what my customers are feeling and thinking in any one moment in their journey. It's not an easy thing to solve.
What is the color of your CTA for your buy button? Red is scary to people and black is like ominous, but you can be brave and you can be a little bit more bold.
Have you seen some times where the organizational structure has created channel conflict?
Absolutely. We should all be trying to get the customer to convert where they are, because that's the win for the entire organization.
All right, Nick, what do you get when you cross a retail veteran with a digital strategist who lives and breathes A/B testing?
I don't know. Someone who reads surveys on Sunday mornings for fun?
Exactly. And her name is Kacey Sharrett. She's our guest today. She's been in the game long enough to have launched digital transformation at brands like Toys R Us, Barnes & Noble, and most recently, GoPro.
And her claim is the first executive in the US with omnichannel in her job title. And trust me, she's still wondering why we are still talking about omnichannel 10 years later.
So in this episode, Kacey takes us deep into what it really means to optimize digital experiences, not just tweaking KPIs, but truly designed for conversion, customer trust, and behavior.
She breaks it down into tiers like Maslow's hierarchy, but with less self-actualization and more, don't make me click 6 times to find your return policy, please.
We also got into some wild stories like how a store team hit their fill rate metric by buying product from competitors just to ship it back out to customers. I'm not kidding.
Plus why A/B testing is her favorite superpower, how session replays can reveal rage clicks, and why listening to the customer, even when they say, "This site sucks," is still a gift.
She even shared a bold idea on what the future of e-commerce might look like in the age of AI agents. And spoiler alert, it has her both excited and a little bummed.
This one's packed with insights and laughs, so if you're leading digital strategy, working in e-com, or just want to hear Chuck nearly botch the intro 3 times...
Hey, wait a minute. I think we edited that out.
Now let's get frictionless.
Kacey, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's talk about digital optimization, something you know very well, because let's talk about how you optimize site tactics to encourage conversion. Like, what should brands be doing with the customer after they get to their property?
Well, I think first of all, the way that I think about it is that the role of a digital leader is to create digital properties that people want to visit, and obviously driving traffic to all sites, including stores. So as kind of we're talking today, just know that my filter is, yes, I want to bring people to the website, but I also look at my responsibilities as driving traffic for the business as a whole. I think people come to you for a lot of reasons. Some are already aware of your brand. They've got a favorable enough opinion to come directly to your website to explore. Maybe they don't know your brand, or they've discovered you during a non-branded search, or maybe they weren't even in market, but saw an ad that sparked their interest, so they went deeper. And so, like, thinking about that and not knowing whether or not a consumer has a certain type of history or what their own journey is, I think makes it a little bit challenging. So when I think about, things that are super important, there are tier 1 activities that are kind of the must-haves. And Nick, I think you may have referred to this in a prior episode as like the hamburger reference, if I'm not mistaken. And some of this applies really for stores as well, right? You expect the product to be in stock. You expect it to be where you need it when you want it. You expect for the website to work. Make sure you don't have those technical challenges. And you want to be able to make sure that you provide whatever support that the customer is looking for, either on the pages or obviously off the site. I think if you're looking at like optimizing and you start to think to the next level, because those are like the basics, people will stop shopping with you if you trip up on any of those, right? But, think about how many clicks does it take for the consumer to do the action that they're trying to do. Let's not make them hunt for the information. Know that you can provide a lot of good stuff upfront and save them the trouble. You want to make sure that people can pay the way they want to be able to pay. So it's not like kind of waiting in line, if you will, when you go to a store. You want to have good communication pre and post purchase and meet your commitments. Like the trust in the brand is something that is super critical. So those are basic things that I think maybe you can divide into tiers. I do think about also there are a lot of ways to optimize. I'd love to get in there if you actually, want to start the conversation about like a little bit more specifics, but I think like the true secret sauce is really getting down into the details and figuring out how you can look at each one of those journeys and pick apart where the consumer is and really start to think about things like conversion, improving conversion. So I don't know. So let me know. You want to go there?
I do for sure. I mean, what even is optimization when you really think about it? Like it's such a broad concept, and what the way you define that, is it just improving KPIs? Like what is optimization?
So I would think about if you're running an e-commerce business, right? There are multiple kind of things along the way that are kind of critical, right? You've obviously got to have traffic driving. You've got to make sure that you have people who are building out the experiences. You've got to make sure that people are operating, doing the non-sexy stuff on the back end. You got to have the support. You've got to have insights and analytics and testing. And that's where a lot of the optimization comes in. And then you also have to have people that can help you really grow, through performance marketing and a lot of the personalization and localization and content. But I think optimizing is just one of many, many pieces that's required to operate a site. I love, and one of the first things that I look for if like I'm working with a new team or if I'm even taking a look at a new business initially is, hey, do they have an A/B testing program? And I am such a fan of being able to test. I think testing gives you a data-driven way to ask and answer questions. I also think for digital folks, it's a tremendous advantage that you have versus people who are running store operations, right? You don't get the opportunity to see and change behaviors on the fly and see that happen at scale. So I love, love, love A/B testing. You can do it obviously on your websites. You can do it on your outbound marketing. You can split traffic. And with all of the tools that are available today, like you can go 20 different directions and collect real-time insights. So I love that. I also think that that data is so powerful, and to be able to take a look and try something out that maybe if you were a risk averse organization, you wouldn't want to do, but you can test with a very, very small portion of traffic and keep amping it up until you get to a reasonable level of comfort that the experience that you're changing is the one that the consumer will respond to.
Can you think of an example where you've had a surprise, where you tested something you didn't think was going to work, or vice versa at a prior company?
Probably if I'm, thinking about GoPro, there's a lot of things. There was no testing organization when I went there. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to build out, like, from the ground up. And there really the organization was fairly small from a digital perspective. We started with a huge laundry list, a huge, huge laundry list. One of the things that we started with, and this is the classic example, is like, what is the color of your CTA for your buy button? Red is scary to people, and it means, I can be out of stock. Black is like ominous. And so we started to test into just colors of buttons and what things, for our brand were appropriate for, kind of our color schemes, but also what were the colors that were going to invoke a bit of a sense of confidence. That's a super classic example of something that you can A/B test into. But we actually went so far as to redesign our pages. So we had standard kind of PDPs where you would get all your information about your product. And they were very long pages. Our product is rich in all kinds of information that, is varies from super technically deep levels of information that really only a super kind of tip of spear user is going to be into, versus we also had to think about a brand new user. It's very overwhelming to show a lot of information. So, one of the things that we dreamed up was like, okay, what if we kind of create this sort of shop and learn page so that I have different pages based upon the type of consumer that I might be. So if I'm coming to the site and I'm already intent on maybe making that purchase, I just want to go right to the shop page. Show me the product, show me the options, let me make those decisions, and boom, let me go. But maybe I want to learn. Maybe I want a nice, rich page that has a lot of assets, a lot of explanation, maybe, links to a lot of different videos. And so I want an experience that maybe I can tab to those other sections. I can tab down to the reviews if I want to get there. I don't have to scroll through the whole page. But that's one of the things that I think you can test without fear. I think normal websites you'd be very concerned about changing the complete structure of a page, especially if you don't have a lot of products that, are in your assortment. So that's a pretty significant change. That was one that was very successful for us. We saw that they spent a little bit more time, but they, found it easy to navigate. We didn't get it right the first time. There were things that we needed to learn along the way, but you can be brave and you can be a little bit more bold, if you will, to test into some of these things that might be theories.
One of my immediate thoughts that comes up, that I've always struggled with the opt-in feedback style methodology, because the desire to want to opt in into feedback is inherently negative. So you don't necessarily get to feel what customers are enjoying inside that opt-in feedback. So if we're really in a game of optimization, that's almost like a remediation concept. Is basically saying, help me figure out what's broken, and thank you for taking the time. I really genuinely appreciate that. And then you've gone through session replay, just like you're saying. But what about the user that's in a good flow? Either they feel like it's just fine, but it could be better. How do we get into figuring that out? It's almost asking, to tie into your other half of your question on A/B testing, how do you figure out what you actually want to A/B test?
For me, so number one, I think it's really important to know what your product is that you're selling and who the audience is that you're trying to sell to. And you are not going to make your site perfect for everyone. So I think first and foremost, you need to prioritize, who the consumers are that you're trying to reach. And you need to really do, journey maps if you want to get super detailed to really understand what those steps need to be. I think our consumer insights team was always a tremendous partner in saying, hey, we're hearing this, we're seeing this, is this something, again, that you can test into so you can start to use data? I've said this for years. I think I'll probably say it for as long as I live. As long as there are other retailers out there and other businesses out there who are working with the consumer on a more frequent basis than I am. And the businesses that I've been in have not been heavy repeat purchases, right? They've not been consumers who come to the site every week, and grocery shop or something like that, right? It's not Uber. I'm in a business where you might see a consumer once a year, maybe once every 10 years. And so you really need to consider them a new customer out of the gate. But there's always going to be somebody who has consumers who are visiting your site more often than you, who are trying new things and that you can learn from. So I do believe, and there's a book on this, as you guys probably know, the fast second is okay. It is all right to let others lead with features and benefits. Not everything is going to be for you and your consumer, but you can get great ideas out there from what other businesses are doing. So it doesn't all have to be original. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that the consumer loves a ton of originality with experiences. Think about the first time that you went into a business that had a self-checkout, right? It could be jarring. What do you mean there's not a cashier who's, going to ring my groceries through, and I have to figure out how to, ring up produce on my own? That's not easy. So change is a little difficult. You don't have to be the first, but I think if you're close to your consumer insights team can provide you the data. You can be looking at your verbatims and talking to your team and seeing what other people are doing. all of those things come together to give you roadmap ideas and optimization ideas. Obviously, if you're looking at your KPIs, there's bars, there's measurements that you can take to see, are you at pace with other similar businesses or are you way off? And if so, why? And then, you can certainly do deeper dives in. But I believe listening to the consumer is the number one place.
I think figuring out the voice of the customer is kind of the general sentiment here. But figuring out the voice of the customer when they're not willing to tell you is the challenge that I always seek out personally, because I want to go find out, how do I know what my customers are feeling and thinking in any one moment in their journey. It's not an easy thing to solve, and I'm not trying to say it is, but that's where I'm trying to ingrain myself, because that, as much as I love the opt-in, I'm fully for it, just like the way you're saying. And you absolutely have to read the context, and you absolutely have to know their journey to be able to put context into whatever the comment is. That's going to be the minority by a lot. And so how do I fill in the other 99%? And frankly, if you get 1% feedback, that's like incredible. So
I do love the session replay because you're getting to see the behaviors, because you'll never know the whys. You never get all the pieces all put together, right? But you can see the behaviors. I also love there are digital experience platforms, and we have one that we use that I enjoy, and you can use them on the website or the mobile app, and they're AI powered, so you can turn those behaviors into some actionable insights. So you get the heat maps, you also get the journey maps. And so I love those because that's telling you, where did the customer come in from? What pages did they visit? How many pages did they visit? And then where did they go to next? So you can start to get into like that world of predictive analytics. And again, you can kind of take a look at it, mastermind some things, test into some things, and go into your business with some theories about, hey, if we change this, maybe this thing happens, and we're able to really start to do that level of optimization, I think, that everybody longs for. But the digital experience platforms allow you to democratize the access to information. They're very user friendly, and you can answer questions in real time, which is also super fun.
Kacey, how has the landscape changed for DTC, for direct to consumer, and how has that impacted the complexity of running an e-commerce site in today's world?
Like 100-fold. I don't even know what number to put on it. Like, and look, I've been around in retail for a while, and when I started, like, there was no internet, right? You're either shopping in a store or that at some point you were shopping online. And I mean, just think about, and for marketers, it's super tough. But people are shopping now so many different channels. They have exposure to brands in so many different ways. Impressions are coming from everywhere, that the complexity is now at an insane level. And honestly, no one has all of the answers, and no one has been able to figure every component out of how people are shopping. And it's different for every single retailer. Again, we have a business where a consumer is not visiting you with frequency. Like, recall might be low until they're in that moment and they have need. But you've got other businesses where consumers are visiting on a regular basis. And, that's super tough too. When you have a higher ticket price for your product and it's much more discretionary, or it's a much more highly considered, product, so much more research is involved. And now, like, just think about, like, where are you going for your research today? Like today, this moment that we're in. And I can guarantee that a good portion of the audience has ChatGPT or Perplexity or something loaded on their phone. I am fascinated about the steps that we're taking. How quickly it's coming is a little bit frightening, but I do believe that we are going to move into this world of agentic AI, where the ultimate level of personalization is that I'm going to have my own chat GPT that's going to be able to go out and go look at all the sites, find the things that I need, and even take that action of purchasing for me to get me my paper towels or, whatever it is that I'm looking to buy. And that's going to all happen without me doing any discovery anymore. I think about it's actually, it makes me a little bit sad because I think to some degree consumers are going to visit websites with a little bit less frequency because they're going to be relying on, these AI assisted tools to be bringing them, fetching them information. And maybe, just maybe, they'll go in and go do some research on their own, but there will be some degree of some amount of consumers who don't even actually experience your website. I find that a little bit sad, but exciting at the same time. But I think it changes our paradigm. So, the question is about complexity. Well, it's like, okay, now how do I optimize the site from really an SEO perspective so that I can be seen by these new search engines? So it's changing every day. I love it, but there's a lot of change for sure.
This idea of Gen AI journey, which starts and stops with, I guess, a text box, reminds me of a conversation we had with Adam Candela from Dunkin' Donuts, where like, if you predict somebody's routine and you basically say, get your normal order, and you click yes, it stops them from testing the rest of the menu. And so you're reducing friction tenfold, yet reducing revenue as well. Because usually people, when they're getting their regular order, they might be like, that looks good, I'll try that too. But they're not going to anymore because they're just saying, yes, regular, done.
Isn't that the flip that people made when they were shopping in a retail store and I could walk in the door and I've got all these racks and all these other things to choose from? And, when we moved to the internet and everybody's like, nobody's going to buy apparel online, like, no way. Well, and you think about now the onus is on the retailer to serve up all of these recommendations because otherwise there's no exposure to it from a consumer perspective, right? It's the same thing.
Maybe somebody will build recommendation agents that will come along. The other agents go, wait a minute, have you checked out these 5 other options?
Right. That's right.
That'll be a whole new business opportunity.
I think there's a few businesses that are doing that today, and I don't know how well they're doing it, but that exists in some form today.
So let's talk about bridging the online and offline experience, because a lot of your background, you said that you started out in stores and then moved over to e-commerce. So maybe some of your experience, some of your early omnichannel strategies at Toys R Us, or what did you learn in that? And how did you bridge that gap between online and offline?
Well, thank you for the question. And I will tell you, this is something that I think I was the first executive in the US with omnichannel, my title, many, many years ago. And it was multi-channel. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, this seems really basic. Like, we're just trying to give the consumer kind of equal access to information and inventory, right? And I remember saying in a panel over ten years ago, like, if we're still talking about omnichannel 10 years from now, like, we will have done something wrong. It's just really putting the customer, at the center of those experiences. But I think the devil is in the details. That all sounds great, right? But I was listening to your guest, like, talking about the specialized bikes, business. And it's like, well, I don't have enough inventory to feed all of these beasts. So now how do I prioritize, right, where inventory is going to go? We had some amazing times at Toys R Us with the early days of omnichannel, right? So there was no buy online, pick up in store, shipping from store, ship to store, same day delivery. And we were like, we're going to go out and we're going to do this. We had 850 stores and we had a website. And organizationally, we didn't have any type of organizational setup to facilitate that. So we started down a path of like, okay, let's kind of anchor to the things that are important and those North Stars that we know to be true. And it was such a journey. We made a lot of mistakes, but we ended up shipping thousands of items in peak holiday from a Toys R Us store, thousands of items from a single store out to .com consumers. It was super fun and super, like, energizing because every day we just never knew what was going to come at us next. But amazing times. But the devil is in the details of how you measure success and also how do you incentivize people from a performance perspective. So a lesson that we learned with shipping from store. So we would pass down to stores, hundreds, thousands of orders to some, and they had to fill these orders. And we were like, okay, so what's the KPI? How are we going to evaluate the stores on how well they do? And so we said, okay, it's going to be fill rate. So if they can fill, over 90% or 95% of the orders, then that will be success. So we got a nice little scorecard for omnichannel capabilities. They got red, yellow, green, and we evaluated them on fill rate. And what we found was some stores were so intent on meeting that metric is that they would actually go to their neighboring Target or Walmart or whatever store. They would go buy the product they needed to fill the order, come back to their own store, return it so they could fill an omni-channel order for an online customer.
Oh my.
Think about that. And I mean, this happens. I mean, this is when I tell you, like, you got to go in and you got to have these conversations. But that was like super eye-opening. But what you measured, which measure gets done? So if you think about now, fast forward, right, 15 or so years, wherever we are today, and I have a separate P&L for .com, and I have a separate P&L for a store business, and I'm organized in such a way that there's contention for inventory. There are battles over pricing and promotions, that if people are not organized in a way that they can work together, ultimately, number one, the consumer is not going to win, because we're not putting the consumer kind of at front and center. And you're going to have a lot of infighting, and you're going to have people who are having their own agendas, and they're operating in a way that makes their channel the best. And the way I like to think about it is that the website is the most visited, visible store in the company, right? Thousands and millions, in some cases, of eyeballs hit your site. And these are people, your website is functioning in such a way where it's meant to communicate what the brand is. So it's the brand voice. You're, being able to learn about even the values of a company. You're obviously being able to do product research and people researching pricing and what have you. But the thing is that all of us, no matter what company you work in, no matter what channel you work in, all of our jobs should be convert that consumer in that channel. So if they're in a marketplace, then my job should be get them to convert there. If they're on Amazon and they're on my brand page on Amazon, get them to convert there. If they're in a store and they're looking at, whatever the product is, get them to convert there. Instead of trying to fight over resources and inventory and pricing and make one channel more profitable than another one or disadvantage a channel, we should all be trying to get the customer to convert where they are, because that's the win for the entire organization. It's hard to do that, like for D2C though, like seriously, because it's like, okay, what can I offer the consumer that is different maybe than the offering in other channels? And so like I think about, okay, so product exclusives, right? .com only products or gift with purchase, new releases first to .com. You can trade up, trade in. Those may be things that I can offer that are unique, because I'm not ever really going to be able to duplicate that experience of a consumer being in a store and talking to a store associate, where day in and day out, all they do is they talk about your product, right? Customization, obviously something that you can do online. Offering membership or subscription or loyalty, right? Where you get some perks with free shipping or points or early access. Those are all important too. But you have to remind the consumer of, okay, you're here and here's all the things that we can do for you, convert now. Like, you just don't want them to leave. And I think if everybody kind of would sit around a table and hold hands and say, we're all in it because we want the brand to be successful and we want the consumer to be successful in purchasing our stuff so that they come back again, like that would be my like ideal happy place for all of us to live in the retail world.
Have you seen some times where the organizational structure, the way teams are structured, has created channel conflict?
Absolutely. But I will tell you, it's almost less about the structure and it's more about the leadership. So you don't need to have a CEO that is digitally savvy to understand the role and the importance of digital, but you need for the CEO to have that mindset about how to capture the consumer and how to make it right no matter where they're shopping with you. And that's so much easier to say than to actually do, because you get into, a lot of sticky situations. But I will tell you, it almost every time it comes back to how the CEO thinks about the business and communicates to their, contingents about how you should run it versus how you're organized. And I think the right leader in digital can also be of service to all of their business partners. Like I truly think about my job and my role is to help the brand to be successful, to help my peers look good, and to provide that service in addition to being the person who really is charged with driving the digital features and functionality and that business as well. So
Well, this has been great, Kacey. We've talked a lot of different topics, terrific insights. How can people find you and connect with you? What's the best way?
yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. This has been great. I've had a good time, and honestly, to be able to take, I'm going to say it out loud, 30 years of learnings, in the retail world with some great brands and some amazing people and some amazing teams. I have to say, like, you make a lot of mistakes and that's where you learn, but so happy to share and air some of those as well. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us, and be sure and like us on your favorite podcast platform. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover, let us know, and be sure to subscribe to Frictionless, the newsletter, so that you get those issues in between our episodes. In the meantime, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm at Chuck Moxley, and Nick, who is
In Paladino.